A man's body might follow desire, but his soul only follows a woman who touches his mind. Let that one land, my friends. We've been told a lot of things, haven't we? That to get a man's attention, you need the perfect hair, the perfect heels, the perfect hip-to-waist ratio. That seduction lives in the curve of your body, the flutter of your lashes, the right kind of lipstick. But what if I told you, yeah, that's the biggest lie you were ever sold? Because the truth is, the most powerful part of a man isn't his body. It's what you'll never see. It's the quiet place behind his eyes, the world he hides even from himself, his inner kingdom, his storm, his story. And if you want him to surrender, not just flirt, not just follow, not just fantasize, but surrender, don't touch his skin, touch his mind. If this already feels like truth in your bones, hit that like button right now. Press subscribe. Not for me, for you. Because what we're about to unlock isn't a dating tip. It's a shift. And once you understand it, you'll stop chasing affection and start commanding it. Now, hey, ladies, imagine this. You walk into a room, not the loudest, not the most dressed up, but still somehow heads turn. Not because you're showing skin, but because you're radiating something else. A silence that speaks louder than stilettos. A presence that can't be explained, only felt. That's not a performance, and that's not a trick. That's power, real feminine sacred power. Most women try to impress with what they wear. But the unforgettable ones, they impress with what they evoke. See, somewhere along the line, society gave you a one-dimensional playbook. Be hot, be chill, be easy to want, but never too deep, never too strong, never too real. And yet here you are, doing all the right things and still wondering why the connection fades, why the chase dies, why the man who once seemed obsessed now seems distracted. Let me break it to you gently but truthfully. He didn't lose interest in you. He just never saw you in the first place. Carl Jung, yeah, we're going there, once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." My friends, when you understand that his mind, the world behind his bravado, behind the jokes, behind the confidence, is where true connection begins, everything changes. You don't need to seduce with your body when you can haunt his mind. You don't need to shout when your silence can echo for hours. This is not manipulation, this is mastery. And I know what you're thinking, but what if he doesn't respond? Then he wasn't meant to receive you, because this energy, this kind of presence, it doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't beg to be chosen. It is the choice. So stay with me, because once you learn how to reach him here, points to head, his heart and his hands will follow, not as a tactic, but as a reaction. Because the kind of woman who understands how to touch a man's mind, she doesn't compete, she doesn't perform, and she simply is. And that's exactly why he can't forget her. Let's begin. Number one, the real trigger isn't visual, it's emotional memory. He won't crave your body until he craves how you make him feel. And my friends, most women are too busy being seen to ever be felt. Let's sit with that. You've been taught that visual is everything, that his desire is triggered by what he sees, the angle of your selfie, the sway of your hips, the lingerie, the lighting, the pose. But here's the truth they never tell you. Attraction begins with the eye, but obsession begins with the mind. Because what a man sees might spark his interest, but what he feels, that's what carves your name into the walls of his memory. Imagine this. You're walking down a hallway, dozens of paintings line the walls, bright colors, bold brushstrokes, perfect symmetry. They're beautiful, polished, safe. But one stops you cold. It's not the biggest, it's not the flashiest, but it moves you. There's something haunting about it. Something that whispers instead of screams. And long after you leave the hallway, that's the one you remember. Why? Because it felt like something. That's you. You don't need to be the most flawless, filtered, photoshopped version of femininity. You need to be the woman who sparks emotional memory. That feeling he didn't see coming. That pause in conversation he keeps replaying. That look you gave him that didn't ask, but knew. You see, the unconscious doesn't care about perfect, and it craves truth. And truth is felt, not posed. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let me tell you something most people don't know. That applies to your relationships too. If you keep chasing validation through performance, if your worth is tied to whether or not he texts back, if your confidence swings with his attention, you're living by default, not design. You're appealing to the surface while craving a bond that lives beneath it. Ever wonder why some women leave a man breathless with a single sentence and others can't get a response after 3 perfectly timed messages? It's not luck, and it's emotional atmosphere. It's the woman who walks into a room and changes the temperature just by being. Not louder, not sexier, just more real. He might not be able to explain it, but he feels it. It's in the calm of your voice when others rush to impress. It's in your presence when others reach for performance. It's in your ability to say less and be heard more. And here's the part that hurts a little. A man might enjoy what you show him, but he remembers what you make him feel. Let that settle for a second, because this right here, this is where the game changes. You don't need to make him look at you longer. You need to make him feel you after you've left. When he's alone, when it's quiet, when he's scrolling through his day and your voice drops in uninvited, that's the power of emotional imprinting. And that's where real desire is born. So ask yourself, are you being seen or are you being remembered? Because when you shift from trying to impress to simply expressing your energy with presence, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried, but because you are. This isn't about being the fantasy. It's about being the one who touches the part of him he thought no one ever would. And coming up next, we're about to break open the truth about the unconscious mind and how, when you speak its language, you don't just start a connection. You awaken a fire he didn't know he had. Stay with me. This next part, it's where things get psychologically seductive. Number 2, your power begins where his logic ends. If you speak to his mind, you'll hold his attention. But if you speak to his unconscious, you'll own his obsession. And that, my friends, is where most women miss the mark. Because we've been conditioned to aim for the man we can see, his body, his habits, his outward personality. But the real man, the one who wrestles with dreams he hasn't shared, wounds he hasn't named, fears he hasn't faced, that man doesn't live in his Instagram profile. He lives in the quiet, the space beneath the surface, and that's where you need to go. Now, Carl Jung taught us something powerful. The unconscious doesn't speak language, it speaks image. Read that again. It doesn't speak English, it speaks symbol, emotion, energy. So if you want to speak to that deeper part of a man, the part that gets hooked, that starts playing back moments on a loop in his head when you're not around, you don't need the perfect words. You need the right frequency. Let me paint this for you. Imagine you're standing in a forest. It's silent. The air is still. Then you strike a tuning fork. You don't scream. You don't dance. You just vibrate. And that sound, it travels. It fills the air. It stirs birds from branches. It shifts everything without saying a word. That's what it feels like when a woman speaks from that emotionally tuned place. Her words may be few, her voice may be soft, but what she says, it lingers. Because the feminine isn't forceful. The feminine is felt. But here's where many women panic. They think, what if he doesn't get it? What if he needs me to spell it out? What if I sound weird or deep or too much? Listen closely. The man who is ready for depth doesn't need you to dilute your essence. He recognizes it even if he can't explain why. So stop translating yourself into something smaller just to be understood. Start speaking in your native emotional tongue. He doesn't need another clever line. He needs something real, something that tugs at the edges of his memory. That moment when your eyes locked and he couldn't quite figure out why it hit so hard. That's what he'll take to bed. That's what he'll think about in the middle of a meeting. That's what he'll return to when every other connection starts to feel flat. Because, my friends, when you speak with emotional image, when you weave meaning into a moment, you don't just start a spark, you plant a symbol, and symbols, they live forever. Coming up next, we're diving into the most overlooked form of feminine power, how to imprint, not impress. The difference between being liked in the moment and being remembered in silence. You don't want to miss this. Stay with me. Number 3, don't impress, imprint. It's not what you say, it's what echoes after. That's the secret most people never learn, and the reason why some women linger while others just pass through. Let me ask you something, my friends. Have you ever said all the right things now only to be forgotten? Have you ever shared your heart, opened up, performed the version of yourself you thought he'd want, only to be met with silence or worse, indifference? And then someone else walks into his life, says barely anything, no chase, no performance, no strategy, and suddenly she's in his head. Why? Because she didn't try to impress him. She imprinted on him. Impression fades. Imprinting, that lasts. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a room filled with balloons. They're floating everywhere. Bright, bouncy, harmless noise. And in the middle of it all, a single candle flickers. Quiet, still. Where does your attention go? To the flame. Because deep inside, we're not drawn to noise. We're drawn to meaning. And that's exactly how a man experiences the difference between a woman trying to perform for him and a woman who simply is. One fills the space with sound. The other fills it with presence. Here's the truth. Men don't bond through performance, and they bond through resonance, through that feeling they can't explain, but can't stop returning to. And that kind of resonance, it's not loud, it's not obvious, it's subtle, intentional, quietly powerful. It's in your tone, the softness when you say his name without urgency. It's in your eyes, holding his gaze just long enough to say everything you're not saying out loud. It's in the silence you're unafraid to sit in, because you know the pause can say more than a paragraph ever could. See, the mind listens to words, but the unconscious listens to energy. You don't need to tell him you're different. He'll feel it. And that's where storytelling comes in. Not the kind you post online. I mean the kind you weave between moments. The subtle suggestion, the phrase that paints a picture, the emotional space you create without asking for anything in return. And for example, instead of saying, "I like talking to you," you simply smile and say, "Conversations with you feel like slow jazz in a thunderstorm." Boom. You didn't describe your feelings, you gave him a scene. You created a sensation, and now that line isn't just heard, it's stored in his subconscious, it has texture. Because the woman he remembers isn't the one who tried the hardest. It's the one who made him feel something real without even trying. So stop reaching for applause. Start speaking for the echo that comes when he's alone, when he least expects it, when your words loop back in his mind, not because they were loud, but because they were true. And next, we're about to tap into one of the most potent seduction techniques of all, the art of the unfinished moment. The almost, the pause, the emotional cliffhanger. Stay close, because this next piece, it's what turns casual interest into craving. Number 4, the 3 words that create chemistry, you and me. Not a line, a mirror, a memory waiting to happen. My friends, these 3 words, you and me, they're not just flirtation, they're emotional architecture. And when spoken with the right presence, they don't just land, they linger. You see, most people think connection is built through big declarations. I like you, I'm into you, let's hang out. But the deepest chemistry, it's born in the subtle, the suggestive, the symbolic. And that's what you and me is. It's not a question, it's a seed. Because when you say those words with grounded confidence, not to get a reaction, not to impress, but just to let the energy land, you're not asking for a moment, you're offering a story. You and me, we turn the quiet into a conversation. You and me could get into some beautiful trouble. You and me on a rainy Sunday, dangerous combo. Feel that? It's not about complimenting him. It's about including him, drawing him into a little shared universe that didn't exist until you opened the door to it. You didn't demand anything. You suggested a possibility. And the masculine mind, it loves possibility. It's wired to respond to the language of creation. That's why you and me works. It's co-creation language. It's about we, not me begging you or you chasing me. It's about us, written in between the lines. This is where most women miss the power of feminine energy. They think seduction is about being the prize, but real feminine power isn't about being admired from afar. It's about pulling him into a moment he didn't know he needed. Because you're not trying to seduce him, you're scripting the memory he'll replay later. When he's alone, driving, working out, scrolling mindlessly, and suddenly, damn, you and me, That felt like something. He won't even know why it stuck, but it will. Because the phrase didn't land in his ears, it dropped into his unconscious. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Well, when you say you and me with intention, calm energy, and a half smile that says, "I'm good with or without your reaction," you're the catalyst. You don't chase transformation, you trigger it. And let me say this clearly, this isn't about being cute. This is about becoming the kind of woman whose presence writes its own memory, not with force, with frequency. So the next time the vibe feels light, the energy's moving, the eye contact lingers, drop it gently, playfully, confidently. You and me, and then stop. Let it hang. Let the silence do its sacred work. Because what's coming next, we're going to talk about the one thing that makes those three words unforgettable. Not what you say, but how you say it. The energy behind it, the stillness, the mystery, the congruence. Stay with me. This next part, it's where emotional gravity turns into full-body magnetism. Number 5, the feminine edge, inner stillness, outer mystery. He feels you before he hears you. And my friends, that one truth separates the woman he forgets from the one he follows. Because here's something they rarely teach you. It's not your words that reach him first. It's your energy. Before you ever open your mouth, he's already met you. In your presence, in your posture, in your pause. You've been trained to speak to impress, but the feminine edge, it speaks through vibration, through stillness, through subtlety. That's where the mystery lives. Carl Jung said, the body expresses what the soul cannot say. So ask yourself, what is your body saying before your voice begins? Is it rushing, proving, performing, or is it rooted, confident in silence, radiant without movement, undeniable without effort? Let me give you a picture. Imagine a still lake just before dawn. The sky is soft, the surface untouched. You can almost hear the quiet. It invites you in, makes you want to come closer, to sit, to feel, to reflect. Now imagine a loud waterfall, crashing, constant, demanding. Yes, it's dramatic, but it doesn't pull you in. It overwhelms you. The loud woman might get his attention, but it's the still one who earns his devotion, because stillness is magnetic. Stillness says, I don't need to perform. I am the performance. And that's what men feel, authenticity in tone, timing, and space. When you're calm, present, and intentional, you send a message without saying a word. I'm not here to chase. I'm not here to compete. I'm here to be, and if you're aligned, you'll meet me there. Men respond to energy before they respond to logic. You could say all the right things, drop every clever phrase, wear the perfect smile, but if your energy says, please approve of me, he'll feel it and pull away. Not because he's cruel, but because the unconscious knows when something is out of tune. But when your voice matches your soul, when your eyes hold stillness, when you allow space in the conversation for feeling instead of rushing to fill the air, that's when he leans in. Because silence, when used with confidence, is not emptiness, it's invitation. It says, I don't need to rush to fill this space because my presence already fills it. Ladies, understand this. When you walk into a moment with calm grace, you're already ahead of every woman who's trying too hard to prove she's worth his time. You don't need to do more, you need to be more still, because stillness isn't passive, it's power contained. And when you master that balance, inner stillness with outer mystery, his body might hear your words, but his soul feels your presence. And next, we're stepping into the ultimate shift, the art of the almost. How to leave him leaning in, reaching, remembering. Not because you gave him everything, but because you gave him just enough. Stay with me. What's coming next? It's the cliffhanger his mind won't be able to shake. Number 6, seduction is an emotional cliffhanger. He doesn't crave what he gets. He craves what almost happened. And if you understand that, my friends, you'll stop trying to satisfy him and start haunting him. Seduction isn't about giving him everything, it's about giving him almost. Just enough to light the match, never enough to put out the fire. This is the psychology of suspense. Think of your favorite movie. Now imagine if right in the middle of the rising action, the narrator explained the ending. No mystery, no tension, no spark. Boring, right? Because it's not the answer that keeps us watching, it's the anticipation. Seduction is no different. It's not a transaction, it's not a checklist, it's a dance. And the most magnetic dancers know how to leave the next step undefined. A half glance, an almost touch, a playful smile followed by silence. An unsaid sentence that leaves him thinking, what was she about to say? That right there, that's what pulls him in. Not because he got the full story, but because you made him want to write the rest of it himself. That's power. You see, most women try to be clear, predictable, safe, and they ask, did you get what I meant? But the woman who truly understands seduction, she doesn't explain, she evokes. She's not a textbook, she's a poem. Let me give you something practical. Instead of saying, I've been thinking about you all day, try, if I told you everything I was thinking, we might both get in trouble. Boom. That line doesn't spill anything, but it drips with meaning. It lets his imagination fill in the blanks, and his imagination is way more powerful than anything you could say directly. Because when a man is forced to visualize what almost happened, what almost got said, what could have occurred if the moment stretched just one breath longer, that's when desire starts burning on its own. This is the difference between pressure and pull. Pressure is, here's how I feel, here's what I want, here's what I need you to do. Pull is, there's something here, but I'm not going to label it. I'll let you feel it. I'll let you chase it. You're not just offering attention, you're offering a question mark. Men don't fantasize about what they fully experienced. They fantasize about what almost was. The woman who knows how to hold that space of almost, the unfinished thought, the suspended tension, the emotional cliffhanger, is the woman whose name echoes in his thoughts long after the conversation ends. So don't always answer, don't always explain, don't always finish the sentence. Let him lean in, let him wonder, let him write the ending, because next we're going even deeper into the one place most women never dare to go, the part of him that builds, remembers, desires, without even knowing why. Stay with me, because the most powerful seduction, it doesn't live in his eyes or his hands, it lives in the quiet part of his mind, and that's where we're headed next. Number 7. His mind is the gateway, not his eyes. The woman he remembers isn't the loudest. She's the one who made him feel seen in silence. And my friends, if you want to know where a man's true surrender begins, stop looking at his body. Look into his mind. Not the surface mind, the one that talks about weekend plans or favorite movies. I'm talking about the inner terrain, the place where ambition collides with fear, where ego tries to outrun insecurity, where the version he shows the world masks the questions he hasn't dared to ask himself. Most women aim for the man on the outside, the one with the charming smile, the deep voice, the confidence. But the woman who becomes unforgettable, she speaks to the man within the man. Carl Jung once said, "What remains unspoken controls us." That applies to relationships more than anything, because beneath every strong man is a silent story. And the woman who learns to listen, not just to his words, but to his energy, becomes the first safe place he's ever known. Let me be clear. He may be surrounded by women who admire him, but admiration is not intimacy, and performance is not presence. What he truly desires, even if he doesn't say it out loud, is someone who sees him fully without needing to fix him, flatter him, or follow him. Someone who mirrors his emotion, not just his interests. You want to leave a mark? Learn to read the space between his sentences, the hesitation before he speaks, the subject he changes too quickly. That's where he's hiding the truth. And when you show him you're safe enough to hold it, he stops posturing. He starts feeling. Because when a man finds a woman who doesn't try to outshine him, but understands how to reflect him, he locks in. Not out of logic, out of relief. Here's your practical shift. And when he shares something, don't just respond with words, mirror the emotion behind it. And if he talks about a failure, don't jump to reassurance. Match his feelings. Say, that must have been heavy to carry. Let him feel felt, because men aren't used to being emotionally met. They're used to being admired or judged, rarely just understood. Be his spark, yes, but also be his safe space. Not his hype woman, not his emotional cheerleader, his mirror, the one that reflects not just who he shows the world, but who he really is underneath. And no, this doesn't mean you abandon your power or your standards. It means you wield them differently, with grace, with discernment, with depth. Because at the end of the day, men may chase attention, but they keep the woman who makes them feel calm in a chaotic world. Next, we're going to pull it all together. Because once you've touched his mind, once you've stirred his deeper emotions, there's one final shift that seals the bond. You ready? Stay with me. Because now we're unlocking the part of him that doesn't just want you. He respects you, and that changes everything. Number 8, you don't need to touch his body. You need to be the thought he can't escape. When you touch his soul, his loyalty isn't a promise, it's a reaction. And that, my friends, is where the chase ends and the remembering begins. So let's bring it full circle. You don't need to touch his body to make him surrender. You don't need to flash, flirt, or flood him with attention. You don't even need to make him want you. You need to become the thought he can't escape and the feeling he didn't expect. The woman he can't explain but can't stop thinking about. That begins with emotional presence, the way you hold a room without trying, the way your silence calms, the way your gaze isn't seeking approval. It's offering reflection, because true feminine energy, it doesn't pursue, it doesn't perform, it radiates. It says, I am whole, I am enough, I am not here to beg for your attention, I am the moment you've been waiting to feel. And trust me, a man knows the difference. He can desire many, but he remembers the one who made him feel real, not wanted for his image, not needed for his validation, but seen for who he is behind the armor. That's where your power lives, not in trying to be everything to him, but in being fully yourself, unapologetically, mysteriously, emotionally intelligent. When you walk through the world like that, you don't have to seduce. Your energy does the work for you. He doesn't look at you and think, she wants me. He looks at you and wonders, what is it about her? And that question becomes the echo, becomes the obsession, becomes the story that lives in the back of his mind while he's in meetings, in traffic, in rooms filled with other people who suddenly feel flat. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you live from that truth, when your feminine power is rooted, not reaching, you don't need to chase connection. You create it. So stop trying to mold yourself into the woman he'll want and start being the woman who reminds him of the man he wants to be. Because the woman who touches his body might get a night, but the one who touches his soul, she stays. Not through force, not through fear, but through frequency. So here's the final truth I want you to carry with you. You don't attract him by becoming more. You attract him by becoming you. Fully, unapologetically, emotionally whole. If that stirred something in you, if it reminded you of who you are underneath all the noise, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Press subscribe, not for my voice, but for your own. Because you're not here to compete. You're here to remember your power and make him remember you. I'll see you in the next one, my friends. Stay grounded, stay glowing, stay you.